communication among this group and to provide support along their paths to practice. The series of webinars on the National Building Code of Canada is part of our initiative to provide support for exact prep for interns, as well as a Con Ed opportunity for licensed architects. Some of our upcoming initiatives include a webinar series on starting your own practice, which we hope to launch in 2019, as well as a webinar on bidding and construction administration, which will take place in the spring of 2019. Please visit our website at raicep.ca for more information, or you can also keep track of our upcoming events through the RAIC's Con Ed bulletins. With a final thanks to RAIC for their support and hard work in helping us put this webinar together, I will turn it over to our first presenter, Sarah Curl of Vortex Fire Protection. Thank you.
Oh, I apologize. I think I got ahead of myself there. Let's start from the beginning. Hopefully you can hear me now. Great. So I will be presenting on the health requirements of the Part 9 of the National Building Code. I am presenting from Vortex Fire in Toronto. We are a firm that does work across the country, working through the different building codes that, you know, from the BC Building Code all the way to Newfoundland and their requirements, which are a little different. We do a lot of our work from the OBC, which if anyone is familiar, you may see some things in these presentations that are a little bit different from the OBC, but they are based on similar principles. So the current edition of the National Building Code is the 2015 edition. It is the 14th edition. The first one was in 1941. So we will get started on the health requirements. We will cover a number of topics here, as you can see from the previously distributed topics: windows, doors and skylights, stairs, ramps, handrails and guards, and so on. So we'll get through those. I thought I would, this is a slide you may not have in your presentation, and it will be included for what will be sent out to you later as an update. But I thought, given this presentation being the first one, I would talk about the application. So this Part 9 applies to all buildings 3 stories or less in building height with a building area not exceeding 600 square meters, provided they're not classified as a post-disaster building. Post-disaster refers mainly to things such as hospitals, police stations, power generating stations, and so on. And there is that as a defined term as well in the building code. So if it's under one of these 5 groups, so groups C, D, E, F2, and F3, then you may apply Part 9. Another definition I've put in here is that of a dwelling unit. And I put this one in especially. I didn't put in every definition, but this is something that comes up. There are different requirements for dwelling units as opposed to other portions of the building. So a dwelling unit is defined as a suite operated as a housekeeping unit. And so you have facilities for cooking, eating, living, sleeping, and sanitary. So this there are some different requirements for dwelling units, so that's why I included that one. So windows, doors, and skylights. So the requirement is under 972 that a door must be provided at each entrance. That makes sense. Each door, entrance door, is required to have a door viewer or some sort of window or a side light. So that's more of a security reason so that you know who's at your door before you answer it. The minimum size of a door in a barrier-free path of travel must be 810 millimeters. It is good to note that barrier-free requirements apply to most buildings, even under Part 9. There are exceptions, and they are stated in the code as well. Other door size requirements are in Table 9551. Required windows and doors for a means of egress from a bedroom have specific requirements. They must be openable without a key, provide an opening of at least 0.35 square meters, and have no dimension less than 380 millimeters. There are also energy efficiency requirements. And part of the performance of windows, doors, and skylights are the following. They must resist the penetration of precipitation, so rain and snow can't get in. They must resist wind loads, control air leakage, resist the ingress of insects and vermin, resist forced entry in residential applications, and be easily openable, unless, of course, it's a fixed piece of glazing. The metal frames of windows, skylights, and doors must incorporate a thermal break. Manufactured windows, doors, and skylights also have specific requirements. These must be governed by the specifications in the North American Fenestration Standard specification for windows, doors, and skylights. Conformance is required. This is a building code requirement. For wooden doors, they must be solid core or stile and rail type. So this is, falls under a lot of your panel doors and also in the construction of doors with the solid portions that you would have. So when it is the stile and rail type, they must have a panel not less than 19 millimeters thick over at least half of the door area. Sorry, not less than 19 over not more than half. And for security purposes, they must be installed in conformance with NBC 9752 for deadbolt and hinge requirements. So again, in dwelling units, there are specific requirements. So when you have a window that is within 2 meters of the adjacent ground, so you're looking at your 6 feet high, they need to comply with the requirements for resistance to forced entry. And a purchase unit should be able to give you this AAMA, WDMA, or CSA listing on the purchased unit. And this is something you can also put into your specification. Windows, doors, and skylights must also comply with the requirements of the CSA standard A440.4 for window, door, and skylight installation. We will move on to a little of the health requirements as they pertain to stairs, ramps, handrails, and guards. So there are minimum widths for stairs in buildings. As most of you will probably recognize this number, for a Part 9 building, the minimum width for exit stairs or public stairs serving a residential occupancy is 900 millimeters. This also applies to exit stairs serving a single dwelling unit or a house with a secondary suite. For non-exit stairs, so this would be mainly referring to internal stairs within a single dwelling unit or a house, the requirement is for 860 millimeters width. All other occupancies, again, you need the greater of 900 millimeters or 8 millimeters per person based on your occupant load. So if you have a larger occupant load, then you would need to comply with perhaps a larger stair or multiple stairs. Another health requirement is for the clear height over stairs. So this is your overhead height above your tread surface. Stairs serving a single dwelling unit must be 1950 millimeters minimum. Stairs under beams and ducting where you may have some partial lower height areas, maybe 1850, and all other stairs, so this would be in non-residential buildings mainly, should be at least 2050 millimeters above your finished floor or the finished tread surface. For stair configurations, you are permitted to mainly have straight run flights or curved flights. It's important to note that you may see winders in some homes, but these are not permitted in any stairs other than in dwelling units. There are a minimum number of risers in stairs. So in your stair flight, you need to have at least 3 risers. Maximum height of stairs for a vertical height of stairs must not exceed 3.7 meters. So this would be your height between any landings or between your stories. Step dimensions have to be consistent for your building. So for rectangular treads, these are your rise, so your actual vertical height difference. Your run dimensions, maximum min, and tread depth. So for private is defined as single dwelling units, secondary suites, or garages that serve either of these. And public would be considered all other stairs. There are some, for those of you in Ontario or using the OBC, there are some other definitions that may come up, and those are for service stairs that may serve only service rooms. So just something to keep in mind, depending on your jurisdiction, there may be slightly different requirements. Sorry, I will run through some of those numbers there. I sort of skipped that. So your rise, mainly I'll talk about your public buildings first. They need to be a maximum of 180 millimeters high and a minimum of 125. The run does not have a limit, but it must be at least 280 millimeters, and your tread depth has the same requirement. For private stairs, the rise is between 200 and down to 125. Your run is between 355 and 210, and your tread depth is between 355 and 235. The difference there would be accounting for nosings.
It's a 1-800 number. 1866.
I'm getting a little bit of sound there, perhaps from another host, just to let you know. For step dimensions, for angled treads, the average run is 200 millimeters, minimum 150, and treads are to be uniform in height. So there can't be any difference of 5 millimeters between adjacent treads and 10 millimeters between deepest and shallowest treads, with a slope of not more than 150. This allows just for someone traveling up and down a stair to not have a big change in difference from one tread to the next. And as you're walking down, you want to have a certain expectation of what your next step will be. Where you do have winders, and that would be in that residential application, they can't turn through more than 90 degrees. So you would not want to have your winders kind of backtrack on one another. And individual treads must, they cannot have like unusual angular winding. So they must either be 30 degrees or 45. For nosings, tread nosings must be either rounded or beveled. The beveled must extend a minimum of 6 millimeters and a maximum of 14 millimeters horizontally from the front of the nosing. And where you're using a resilient material, as are in certain floorings, the beveled edge may be reduced to 3 millimeters. Ramps in Part 9, where we're not considering barrier-free requirements, must have a minimum width of 1100 millimeters. This is the same requirement for an exit ramp, except where you're serving a single dwelling unit or a house with a secondary suite, the ramp may be reduced to 860 millimeters. For the health requirements in terms of a clear height over ramps, the minimum must be 2050 over that ramp surface. And this may be reduced to 1950, again, where the ramp is serving a house or an individual dwelling unit. The maximum slope for ramps, again, for other than barrier-free required ramps, the exterior.
I can't do anything.
The exterior ramp cannot be more than 1 in 10 maximum slope. So the exterior ramp and interior ramp serving residential also cannot be more than 1 in 10. Where you are looking at a mercantile or an industrial occupancy, this may be increased to 1 in 6, and other occupancies may be 1 in 8. If your ramp is steeper than 1 in 12, your maximum rise between floors or landings is 1500 millimeters. So if you have a ramp that needs to accommodate a grade difference of more than 1500 millimeters, there should be landings between each section of ramp.
The connection was lost.
Okay, folks, I'm getting a note that if you have called in, to please mute your phone. Hopefully that will solve some of our feedback issues there. And please do let us know if there's any issues with hearing this content. Thank you. As discussed, where you're required to have a landing, landings are not permitted to have a slope of more than 1 in 50. If your landing or any portion of your floor has a slope greater than 1 in 50, this is indeed a ramp in and of itself. So again, as discussed, landings are required at the top and bottom of every flight of stairs. at the top and bottom of every ramp having a slope more than 150. So again, a ramp is defined as any portion of that passage that has a slope more than 150, where you have a doorway opening into a stair or ramp, where a ramp opens onto a stair, and where a stair opens onto a ramp. So this is where you require a landing. All landings must be at least as wide as the stair or the ramp which they serve. For example, if you have a 1100 meter ramp, your dimensions of the landing must be 1100 wide. The landing lengths have minimum requirements, and they vary depending on the location of the stair or the ramp. So the landing for a stair or ramp serving a single dwelling unit also depends on your landing configuration. So if you have a straight run of stairs or a straight run of a ramp, or turning less than 30 degrees in a dwelling unit interior, your minimum length is 860. Where you're on the exterior of a single dwelling unit, the minimum length is 900 millimeters. Where this turn is greater than, where this turn is greater than 90 or greater than 30 degrees but less than 90 degrees, your minimum length has some inside edge and outside edge requirements. So at the inside edge, it must be at least 230 millimeters and at least 370 millimeters at 230 millimeters from the inside edge. Once your turn is greater than 90, it must be not length than the stair or the ramp width. So in areas other than a dwelling unit, if you have a straight run or have a turn less than 30, it's the lesser of the 1100 or the stair or ramp width. So if you are permitted to have a 900 millimeter stair, for example, then your landing is also permitted to be 900 millimeters in length. If you have a turn greater than 30 degrees, your landing length is, again, not less than the stair or the ramp width. So height over landings are similar to the heights over stairs. So the minimum height of a landing serving a single dwelling unit or a secondary unit must be not less than 1950 millimeters. And over all other landings, this must be increased to 2050 millimeters. Handrails on stairs are also vary between where they are located. So within a dwelling unit, and you have a straight stair, curved stair, or any stair actually, you are required to have handrails only on one side. In all other locations other than a dwelling unit, it depends on the stair configuration. So if it's still a straight stair that's less than 1100 millimeters, you need a handrail on one side. Where you have a curved stair or you have a stair that's greater than 1100, you need handrails on both sides. There are similar requirements for handrails on ramps. So again, within a dwelling unit, if you have straight or curved ramps that are less than 1100 millimeters in width, the handrails are required on one side. Where your ramp is increased to greater than 1100 millimeters, you require them on both sides. And for any other location, handrails are required on both sides of your ramps. So I think we have a little bit more feedback there. I'll ask everyone to please mute your microphone. Okay. for when we have wide stairs and ramps, so this would be stairs and ramps required to be over 2,200 millimeters. Handrails must be installed so that no position on the stair or ramp is more than 825 millimeters from your handrail. So this may require intermediate handrails. The continuity of handrails is such that they are required to be continuous over the length of the stair, except where you're interrupted by doorways or new posts. So this would be continuous at landings as well. The handrail termination. So this must not create a hazard. At least one handrail must extend at least 300 millimeters at the top and bottom of each flight of stairs or ramp, except that this does not apply to within a dwelling unit. The height of handrails also have specific requirements. They cannot be less than 865 and not more than 965 millimeters above the stairs. The handrails on landings must be not more than 1070 millimeters. Handrails are not permitted to project more than 100 millimeters into the required width of a stair or ramp. There are specific requirements for handrails in that they are required to be continually graspable. So unusual handrail shapes, whether they be rectangular or some other shape, may not meet this requirement because they need to be able to be grasped by anyone using them. They must be designed to withstand a point load of 0.9 kilonewtons at any point and a uniformly distributed load of 0.7 kilonewtons per meter. Guards are required at surfaces where there is a difference in elevation between your walking surface and the adjacent surface. So this could be at the sides of stairs, it could be at the sides of platforms or other locations. Where this difference is more than 600 millimeters or the adjacent surface within 1.2 meters of this walking surface has a slope of more than 1 and 2, you are required to have a guard. Guards are also required on the sides of interior stairs or ramps where the interior stair has more than 2 risers or the ramp rises more than 400 millimeters. So we did talk about earlier having a minimum of 3 risers in all interior flights of stairs. And this is the location where you would have only 2 would be within a dwelling unit. Guards for windows. So where you have an openable window within a residential occupancy, it must have a guard or a mechanism to limit that opening to 100 millimeters. These guards must be designed to withstand horizontally applied point loads of 1 kilonewton and evenly distributed vertical loads of 1.5 kilonewtons. Guards have minimum heights depending on their location. Within a dwelling unit, the minimum height of a guard must be 900 millimeters. On the exterior of a dwelling unit, this height is also 900, where the elevation difference is less than 1800 millimeters. And where the elevation difference exceeds 1800, the guard must be 1070 millimeters high. And this extends to all other locations where there is requirement for a guard. It must be 1070 millimeters. Where there are openings in guards, they must not allow the passage of a sphere greater than 100 millimeters in diameter, except for in industrial locations where this will not present a hazard, in which case they must not allow the passage of a sphere greater than 200 millimeters. So this is to prevent anyone from falling through or slipping through that guard. Guards must be designed to not be climbable within an area between 140 millimeters and 900 millimeters above the floor. So any unusual feature of a guard, whether there is a design, it must incorporate this requirement so that it cannot be climbable. Again, on this theme for not being climbable, any element that protrudes from the guards, so if you had an unusual wrought iron design or something else, they cannot be more than 450 millimeters horizontally and vertically. I'm sorry, they must be more than 450 millimeters horizontally and vertically from each other. They must not provide more than a 15 millimeter horizontal. They must provide, sorry, not more than 15 millimeter horizontal offset. They do not provide toe space more than 45 millimeters horizontally and 20 millimeters vertically, or present more than a 2-in-1 slope. Stairs and ramps must be able to withstand loading of 1.9 kilopascals for stairs serving dwelling units and secondary suites, and 4.8 kilopascals for all other stairs. Exterior concrete stairs must be supported on unit masonry or concrete or cantilevered from the main foundation wall. Exterior wooden steps must not be in direct contact with the ground unless they are treated with a wood preservative. So you may use exterior wooden steps, but they cannot be in direct contact with the ground. Where wooden stair stringers are used, they must have a minimum depth of 90 millimeters. They must be secured and supported top and bottom. They must be at least 25 millimeters thick if supported along their length, or at least 38 millimeters thick if they are not supported along their length. Spacing for stringers must be at not more than 1200 millimeters where serving one dwelling unit or a secondary unit, and not more than 900 millimeters in other locations. Treads must be at least 25 millimeters thick, or 38 millimeters thick if where open risers are used, or the distance between stringers is greater than 750 millimeters. In other than dwelling units, treads and landings must have a slip-resistant finish. Sound control. Sound control is regulated by the National Building Code based on the sound transmission class, or STC, rating of the assembly between locations. Dwelling units are required to be separated from other spaces in the building, including other suites, by construction having an STC rating of at least 50. Between dwelling units and other adjacent construction, such as elevator shafts, they must have an STC rating of at least 55. The plumbing requirements in the National Building Code Part 9 are somewhat specific. They require that every dwelling unit must be supplied with potable water. For a residence, piping for hot and cold water is required to be provided to every kitchen sink, lavatory, bathtub, shower, and laundry area where this is provided. Piping for cold water must be provided to every water closet. Again, as a defined term, a dwelling unit is required to have a kitchen sink, a lavatory, bathtub or shower, and a water closet. A hot water supply must be available in every dwelling unit. And where there is a basement in the dwelling unit, a floor drain must be provided in that basement. Sewage disposal. Waste from every plumbing fixture must be piped to the building sewer. Building sewers must discharge to public sewage systems or to a private sewage disposal system. Where surface water heating facilities are provided, storage tanks for surface water heaters must be corrosion resistant. Fuel burning surface water heaters must be connected to a chimney or other approved venting device for that heater. Ventilation in residential occupancies. There are minimum requirements for the required ventilation. Every residential occupancy must be provided with a means of ventilation. This may be by openable windows or by a mechanical ventilation system. Where openable windows are provided for natural ventilation during non-heating season, they must be provide protection against weather and insects. The National Building Code provides minimum unobstructed window areas for adequate ventilation for specific rooms and spaces, and this is referenced in NBC Table 932.2.2 for these required natural ventilation areas. Where openable windows are not used to provide this ventilation, minimum mechanical ventilation must be provided. There are minimum airflows for specific rooms and spaces, specifically in terms of air change rates in Table 932.2.3. During heating season, which we're coming upon now, ventilation must be provided by a mechanical ventilation system. So the design of this system must be in accordance with good engineering practice, such as the manuals, handbooks, and standards of ASHRAE, HRAI, and SMACNA. The principal ventilation system must provide an exhaust capacity for every room and space in a dwelling unit. This is defined in terms of liters per second and is based on the number of bedrooms in a dwelling unit as provided in NBC Table 932.3.3. When a forced air system is not installed, a heat recovery ventilation system must be provided to give these required ventilation rates. Where this HRV or heat recovery system is provided, the outdoor air supply must be tempered to at least 12 degrees Celsius before being circulated. So all this means is that you cannot supply, if it's very cold outside, you cannot supply air to your to the space that's less than 12 degrees Celsius. Carbon monoxide alarms are required in a residential occupancy where you have a fuel burning appliance, such as a gas stove, oven, a furnace or water heater, or a fireplace, or where you have a storage garage, so where you have the potential for emissions from a vehicle to contain carbon monoxide. The CO alarms must be installed inside each bedroom or outside each bedroom within 5 meters of each bedroom door. It's also required in any service firm that contains a fuel-fired appliance. When it comes to dwelling units, there are required heating systems. Residential buildings intended for use in the winter must be provided with heating facilities. These heating facilities must be capable and designed to maintain a minimum indoor temperature of 22 in all living spaces, 18 in unfinished basements, common service rooms, ancillary spaces, and exits in houses with secondary suites, and 15 degrees Celsius in heated crawl spaces. By comparison, the OBC does have slightly different requirements, so that is something to keep in mind. There are just slightly differing numbers that are required. General requirements for heating and air conditioning systems just require that they be designed, constructed, and installed in accordance with good practice. And these may be as stated in ASHRAE, HRAI, CHC, and SMACNA. Heating appliances that are installed must be designed and constructed to a variety of CSA standards. These are identified in NBC section 933.5. So this will depend on the type of heating appliance that's installed, whether it be a propane, a gas, or other. Air duct systems within the scope of Part 9 include all ducts, connectors, fittings used in a system. They're required to be constructed of steel, aluminum, copper, clay, or similar non-combustible materials. These coverings and linings, where applied, must be non-combustible when exposed to temperatures exceeding 120 degrees Celsius. Duct linings for air duct systems must have a maximum flame spread rating of 25 and an SDC, or smoke developed classification, of 50. Duct outer coverings must have a maximum flame spread rating of 75 and smoke developed of 50 maximum. Where radiators and convectors are used, every steam or hot water radiator located in a recessed or concealed space must be provided with a non-combustible lining or backing. So this could be in a recessed space in a wall. You would require that non-combustible lining or backing. The surface temperature of a steam or hot water radiator must not exceed 70 degrees Celsius. Piping for heating and cooling systems must be able to withstand the anticipated temperatures and pressures within the system to allow for expansion and contraction due to temperature changes, and must be adequately supported to ensure that undue stress is not placed on the piping. Insulation and coverings for piping in a heating and cooling system must be of non-combustible material, or have a maximum flame spread rating of 25, where the building is required to be of non-combustible construction, or a maximum flame spread of 75 in a building of combustible construction. Piping for heating and cooling systems must maintain minimum clearances between the steam and hot water pipes and adjacent combustible materials. Where your steam or water temperature is less than 95 C, you're not required to have a minimum clearance. Where it is greater than 95 but less than 120, 15 millimeters are required. And where your steam or water temperature is greater than 120 Celsius, you need a minimum of 25 millimeters clearance to combustible materials. Refrigeration systems and equipment for air conditioning, where a cooling unit is combined with a fuel-fired furnace in the same duct, which is very common, It must be installed in parallel with the heating furnace or upstream of the furnace if the furnace is designed for such an application, or downstream if the cooling unit is designed for such an application. So this does depend on the type of equipment you have installed or are designing. Chimneys and venting equipment. So products of combustion from oil, gas, and solid fuel burning appliances must be vented to the building exterior. Where you have venting of fuel burning appliances, they must be accomplished using the installation standards as stated in NBC 933.52 or 933.53. So there is, depending on the type of equipment you have installed, that will depend on the type of venting you are permitted. And this could include direct venting or chimneys or other arrangements. And that comes to the end of the health requirements for Part 9. We did get to this very quickly. It's, again, these requirements are a little more basic than what you will find in a larger building, but nonetheless still important. So I do welcome any questions you may have on this content. We have lots of time to go over them, so if there are any, please send them along. And we'll just pause here for a couple of minutes until that can be sorted.
Because you know when she skipped that huge chunk, that was fire safety.
Yeah, that makes sense then. I guess she's format. Do you think these would be like exam format questions?
So I don't get, like, is she essentially just reading all the stuff that will be questioned? Is that the idea?
I don't know. Like, why are these then?
Yeah, like, should I be highlighting what she's talking about? That's what
I mean, they're good in a way. Like, if we don't have too much time to study, we can just go through the slides and like hit all the major points of things. Like, if we don't have a lot of time to go through every little part of Part 9, if we just go through the slides and just like at least tag where everything is.
I am finding this helpful because at least it's going through and like becoming familiar with what's
It
even
is,
in
yeah,
here.
yeah, it is.
Even though it's boring and she reads off like 45 degrees.
Did she just disappear?
Yeah.
She's left.
I think they're just gathering all the questions on the side there.
I mean, I don't mind it so far. It's like actually pretty good. I'm just wondering how in depth we actually have to go over. I guess the exam would just be like if you know how to navigate to these parts and then follow through and find the rest of the answers.
That's how we feel too. No one's in practice questions. Yeah, right? Yes. Like
I wish they could just be a bit more like hinted. We're all taking this for the fucking exam. We're not actually interested in any of this shit. Can you just be a bit less like? Don't beat around the fucking bush. We're all paying $300. Like,
About the exam.
yeah, we're not paying $300. I'm really interested. Not like a partner building.
Keep your job as a code consultant.
Yeah.
We don't actually care.
Like,
We just want to pass
let's
the
just be
exam.
direct and real about that. We're all fucked, and we just want to be less fucked. Can you tell me how to be less fucked?
Some really good grades.
Some good grades. I miss snack day.
No, are you gonna come back?
Hmm?
Are you coming back to HPM?
I should come back just for snack day.
Come back for Wednesday and be like, oh, I quit again. Should I stop the recording? Or just leave it?
Emma can listen to us chat.
Hi, Emma.
Hi, Emma.
We miss you, Emma.
We're eating grapes.
We're eating grapes and hummus. And carrots. Cucumbers.
Any good goss at work? Are you gonna get fired?
Me?
Oh.
Are you trying us?
Yeah.
I don't even care if I get fired. Doran had a very strange interview on Friday, like behind Dorman's desk.
Who?
Doran.
Oh, interviewing someone?
Yeah.
Hmm.
And the person basically ran out of the building.
What do you mean?
Well, it's just funny because there's nowhere to interview people, so it's so weird. And then
They ran out because of how weird.
No, I don't think that they actually. I think that.
Don't weird him out.
And also, I don't know, like, why have an interview there? Like, that's like surrounded by buildings.
He probably legitimately just walked around and saw a spot, like knowing him. He probably literally just like, oh, you're here.
It's
And
good.
he's interviewing. I don't know who he's interviewing for because like my friend actually wants to apply. And I forward the stuff to Patrick and Nazia and Lindsay.
They just hired that new guy that's working with Stefan. He's the worst. Is he? Andrew Long's been making fun of him because every single day that happens,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
more and more and more casual.
That, and also he thinks he looks like a Game of Thrones character.
Oh, I know.
He looks like a what?
Game of Thrones character?
You?
No, the new guy.
Andrew Wong's his best friend.
Andrew Long thinks that the new guy looks like a Game of Thrones character.
Like which one?
I don't know. He
Like
said the name, but I don't watch the show, so I couldn't tell you.
Like a hot one?
Also, Andrew Long busted his eye, like above his eyebrow, had to get stitches because he fell into a toilet.
At a public Starbucks.
No word on Mel, eh?
She came in the other day.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't see her, but yeah.
I saw her walking through.
Did you quit?
No idea. I didn't wanna.
I texted her when I left. I'm like, oh.
She looked good.
I like your little scarf, Charlie. You got from the grandma.
Do you guys want more coffee?
Give me one.
I wouldn't mind more.
Your face.
I actually don't mind her. It's just I wish like
Who did you hear?
I kind of wish she just said like
This is
Help.
important.
or like health and safety for part 9 is about
Yeah, like the other guy.
we're gonna and then go through it. Like I don't mind her straightforwardness. I just wish she would give you a bit of like. Cause I kind of missed her health and safety intro. Like so I just.
Let's do that now. What are the sections? Health and safety. We just did that. What are
But
the
is
other
it in
sections?
the fire life
No.
and safety requirements? That's
What was
all.
that?
That's
last
another
slide.
one.
That's on.
Sure.
So this isn't the first half, is it? That she's done? Or has she just done an hour and we'll do another hour since we haven't done lunch? Like how many sections are there?
I don't know. And there's water control, but I think water control is separate.
Hi everyone, I'm back. I do have a number of questions that have come in. I will try to address them one by one. In terms of some general comments on this session, I was asked to speak to a general outline or goal for the session. I can't really speak to that in terms of the RAIC requirements for this understanding of the Part 9 health requirements, but I will certainly get into some of your specific questions.
What's that talk about?
There was a request, where is the minimum landing length table located within the NBC? In answer to that, there is no table that consolidates all of these requirements. So there was a table included in the presentation materials, but in terms of the requirements within the NBC, these are located in section 9.8.6. So there are, and in Article 9863, there are the requirements for dimensions of landings, which also refers to other articles within the code. So it would require reading through those, all of those articles within.
What is this?
And I guess in terms of answering any of specific questions on the code requirements, I will certainly attempt to do so and perhaps explain a little bit further. But a lot of these things that have been summarized within the presentation materials will require that, you know, there are conditions for each of those requirements. So I would suggest that you read the associated article in its entirety, because there could be differing requirements depending on the situation. So we did talk about the landing dimensions. So again, that is from Article 9863, of which there are several sentences that have specific landing dimensions. And again, I will pause in between some of these other questions. So if you bear with me, I will get to the next one shortly.
how she like I can't speak to a general goal. Nope. Just
I am a robot.
fucking know this shit.
I don't have a brain.
Billy, have you been sitting at home or in a coffee shop?
I've been about
Library.
not libraries. My home sessions are the least successful.
I
I'm
do
really-
because I end up trying to cook.
I do like do laundry, I do a mask, I like to take baths. I online shop. It's terrible. I'm really behind. So I just like I think after this I might go to a coffee shop.
I feel very behind too. But I said this to Kat at work. I feel like I haven't talked to anybody yet who doesn't feel really behind, and that makes me feel like we're all in the same boat. So long as we're not really behind everybody else, then
Yeah, I've heard there's like I know friends of friends who have like really keener groups for really intense. But I think those are stressing me out. I've been invited to those and like I don't.
Okay, another specific question I did have is the requirement for the number of risers or the minimum number of risers in a set of stairs. So that is related to NBC Article 9833, and that is where it's stated that except for stairs within a dwelling unit, at least 3 risers shall be provided in all interior flights of stairs. So again, bear with me, and I will get to the next question.
You're so good.
Stacy's chips. What's Stacy's?
Are they healthy?
They're not the worst ones. They're kind of different flavors.
Any new news on the Jess and Dom?
I had drinks with them last night.
Was
Dom showed up too.
Oh,
I didn't
really?
know that.
was it fun?
Yeah.
Stacy.
Dom showed up like an hour into it. No, I don't have any more drama. Thankfully. But you know, I also think that she's learned through this whole thing to stop having more names.
What?
Oh yeah, this is being recorded.
Oh shit.
Let's not gossip. Not that they're gonna hear it. Just in case. You're gonna have, you won't like this. Sorry, Charlie. I'm just trying to get to this.
Is she going through one by one?
Yeah, and she's probably like, oh my god, or even knows now. No.
Do you think she's gonna be on both days?
What is she doing right now? I'm not reading everybody's question.
She's probably reading the question and being like, how do I answer this?
Because the other person had a person feeling questions for them,
Yeah.
which I think was more successful.
Enough. You behaved so much better the last time, Charlie. How should we get through all these questions?
This is a pretty big project for them. I don't know why. They're pretty big.
Oh, like
Yeah, and like
in Texas?
Mark Lee just recently became the director of architecture at GSC.
Apparently there might be something on sound transmission. Yeah. And I think he missed that one when he went outside.
I think it might be good to just study her headings and like kind of go through them. I don't even know when I'll have time to read.
I know. No, I honestly think that this is my only time. Like, I don't think I have time to go back to it because I haven't done any CCDC, no bidding, no contract,
No, me neither.
nothing. I'm still struggling, really struggling through final project.
I'm on that right now. It's like going so slow, and it makes me nervous. I haven't done the CCDC stuff.
Yeah.
Like, oh my god, like I'm taking 3 days off, and everyone seems cool with it.
But
excluding like 5 days.
We're gonna take 5 days.
2 days for
Like
exam.
Monday,
3 days.
Tuesday, Friday.
I told Dom I'll take Thursday, Friday, and if I feel screwed, I'll take Wednesday. I'll take Wednesday. I'll take Wednesday.
Or you should take a Monday and see how bad you feel.
The Monday before.
No, just like the Monday of that week, or like so you have a bit more time. Like space it out a little bit, like setting a Monday, going for Tuesday, Wednesday, going for and take Thursday, Friday. I thought about that. Just take like from now till exam.
Does anybody want their drink? Or do you wanna wait till the break?
I might wait till the break. I feel like it's not easy to eat.
I'm thinking I kinda wanna wait till the break, but I didn't wanna like make you guys wait for your drink. So I have some coffee.
Okay, this is a huge waste of our time.
I know, what is she doing?
Yeah. This is like the most.
Yeah, like I'm paying like how many dollars an hour, a minute?
Someone should ask that question.
What are you?
Where's this
You're
man?
wasting my $300.
What are you doing? Where'd you go? We're waiting for the speaker to reveal the next question. Thank you for your patience.
Yeah, this week was like far.
The presentation and sections you covered reflect typical questions on the exam.
Oops, sorry for the pause there. There was a question on, the question is, would you explain the principles of applying the wide handrail requirements on stairs that are over 2,200 millimeters? Would a handrail in the center work to meet the 825 millimeter requirement? And I have to apologize because I cannot find this requirement in the NBC in Part 9.
Way to go.
There is a requirement in Part 3 of the NBC for intermediate handrails. Yeah, so that to be required within 750 millimeters of all portions of the required exit width. But I cannot find it in Part 9,
doesn't
so
seem like she's
I
prepared
will
to
have
answer
to
anything
follow
outside
up
the
on that
slide
one
she
to
has.
confirm that
Like, if they're not
is
my
correct.
slides, I don't know.
And I will somehow respond to this question. Shortly thereafter, we can send it out with an email through the RAIC. Thanks. I will get to the next one shortly.
Care about any of them. Okay, she disappeared again. Like seriously? Can she do this in a more?
Yeah, there's like 20 questions.
She's gonna disappear for like 5 minutes at every question. Did you actually watch the whole thing?
Yeah, but I did it over like 2 weeks.
Yes,
I
sir.
can only do like
It was
30
really
minutes.
honestly towards the end. I just.
There was a specific question on the clear height over stairs. Well, it actually wasn't a question, it was just a comment. So that is related to NBC Article 9822. And again, that requires a clear height over stairs of not less than 2050 millimeters, except where it's in a single dwelling unit or a house with a secondary suite, in which case it must be 1950. One more pause.
She's reiterating her bullshit.
And now like people are have more questions, so it's now just becoming like never ending.
Like I really even just wish she just said today we're gonna cover health and safety.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like I'm not asking for like a insight. Just like, tell me what you plan to do over the next 2 days, not just like
Yeah, I agree.
boom,
I agree.
like here it is.
Yeah. Yeah, because I'm like, are you just gonna read the whole code? Like, when she skipped that whole section, I'm actually kind of happy that she did, because now we'll do that in a fire.
But I didn't know that's what her plan was.
But if my code.
There was another question on the clear height requirements under beams and ducts. So where is located under beams and ducts? Where can the clear height be 1850? And this is in, again, that same NBC Article 9822. The clear height over stairs, under beams and ducting, and secondary suites shall not be less than 1850. So this often is applied to basement suites where you just don't have that additional space. So there is a relaxation of the requirements.
Is the glossary still in part 3? That's right. Glossary in part 9. The index? The glossary. The thing that defines the terms.
The definitions?
Yeah. Oh yeah, the definitions. What is this? What is the secondary suite?
Secondary suite is
I'm just talking about dwelling units and secondary suites.
not suites either.
Is that what used to be in the back, but you pulled it up to the front?
Yeah, that's the index and definition there. Secondary suite. Self-contained dwelling unit with a prescribed floor area located in a building or portion of the building of only residential occupancy that contains only one other dwelling unit and common spaces, and where both dwelling units constitute a single real estate entity.
So like a unit in a duplex? Is that a secondary suite?
Like maybe if it's
Like what is this? Is this a dwelling unit or a secondary suite?
this would be a dwelling unit.
Yeah, this would be a dwelling.
Like I'm thinking maybe if it's like like a duplex, like my sister has a house but she has like a unit in her basement that she rents out. The unit in the basement would be the
Secondary suite. Because if you sold it, it would be sold as one thing.
Yeah. And it seems to be like it can only have one other unit. Secondary suite is only one other unit. It can't have two basement units. Very specific.
So then, like my last house was there were 4 suites in it. It was a house, but there were 4 units. So each one would be a dwelling unit then?
How many of them
Or you don't have 3 second, you can't have.
tertiary unit?
Yeah, sorry for the pauses in between, but I just wanted to be able to answer your question as best as possible. So I did have a question on 972 on Windows. Must conform to which energy requirements? So the energy requirements is part of the performance expectations for windows, doors, and skylights. And this would be related to actually complying with 9731, which is general performance requirements, which refer to in terms of performance requirements of 974 and 975. So there are the North American Fenestration Standard and specifications for windows, doors, and skylights. The CSA standards A440, which there are other a subset of those standards. And for site-built windows, doors, and skylights, there's also the NAFs, or the North American Fenestration Standards. In terms of energy requirements, you can also comply with Part 5, the National Building Code, and other performance requirements, again, are related to that CSA standard of 9761 of the A40, 440.4.
I think she should stop answering questions. It's kind of a waste of a phone. It's not helpful.
Also,
Like,
those questions aren't that helpful either. Whoever's asking those. What's on the table?
Well, no, someone asked that. Someone
Is
asked.
that the one where she said, I can't say?
No, that was our question. Our question was, can we provide an outline? She's like, no.
Oh, that was your question.
I have no idea where this is going.
I was just reading the slides.
I don't know what it is. No idea who put this together. What the fuck is
I feel
going
like she's on a phone a friend or something. I feel like she doesn't know she's like on a phone
She's
a friend
probably
or
in,
something.
yeah,
Texting.
texting the part 3 guy.
What the fuck do I say?
She could have just said no questions. I don't know the answers.
But she just reiterates her slides.
Okay, maybe we should.
There was a question on 988. Can we go over 988 guards and climbability? Some of the clauses were difficult to grasp quickly. What do offsets mean? So if we go to 988,
What do what?
there is again the requirements for guards where you have differences in elevation. This is where it's mainly applied. So in terms of climbability, I think we were talking about the design of guards to not facilitate climbing from 9886. So that is where you would not want to have any sort of the design of the guard that would facilitate climbing between the 140 and the 900 millimeters above. So you would not want to have anywhere where you could have a foothold to, be able to climb that guard and either fall over it or jump over it or what have you. It restricts, the having an opening of, the 100 millimeter diameter spherical object. And that is some of the basic principles behind that. To not have anywhere where you can have a foothold to climb that guard.
That was exactly what it was. How do you know how to navigate towards
I believe related to this question, there's a question, railings, what is the allowable opening of rails to floor? So I believe we're talking about the same thing for railings or guards. So you would have the same requirement that to not have a gap more than the 4 inches, or sorry, the 100 millimeters spherical opening size.
Like it would say those. And it just says like when it says C note to be vertical to return.
I remember Anne sent me like a guide to how to study for part 3 and again. Like how to study for part 3, how to study for part 1. I don't know if I forwarded it to myself.
The next question I have here is, can we go over 9.8.6, especially where it talks about the turn-in stairs? So I'm presuming that the question is related to the requirements for landings where your stairs take another direction. So this would be related to the minimum landing size. So we did talk a little bit about the dimensions of landings, being that they're as wide and as long as the stair, except where they're permitted to be less than that. So there were some permissions for other sizes of dimensions of the landings, but I believe that's what that one would be related to.
asked about relates to the part that
That
you've
I
asked
said.
about. So you should just read the part that you asked about to clarify that part. Bye.
Wait, am I on Quizlet? Could you like follow the questions just in like any order, or was there like a building code section?
No.
They were in every whatever order.
There was also a lot of BC questions in there. It's kind of annoying because of
Was there?
Oh, on Quizlet?
yeah. There's a lot of like, well, a lot for BC. Fuck you.
So I wanted to see if I could find some questions for us today.
Well, do you have the two share files that we Ken and I have?
Another question I have here is, could we go over flame spread ratings? Where can they be acquired within the code? So I think for this question, the flame spread rating discussion was mainly on the duct linings and duct outer coverings. And just in general, where you may be looking at this in terms of other areas, like other than piping, other than like the mechanical portion of the code, flame threat ratings are published based on the materials. You can find this through reference material, but if you're looking at specific products that you're specifying, they will be within the technical cut sheets. So this is something that should be readily available to you from your supplier or whatever your source is for when you're specifying a specific product.
Well, we should just move on. We can finish early.
Or just finish. There is a guide to how to cipher part 3 and part 9 somewhere in these folders. I forget.
Is it in the
I remember seeing it. Have you come across it? I remember.
I want to get my hands on some practice questions.
Huh?
I know. I want some practice questions. That's what I want. I feel like that's the only way you can really study.
It'd be so great if there's someone we can sleep with and he can give us the exam.
Or that. Or just kidding. But yeah.
You can do the sleeping with part, and then we can share.
If he's hot.
If it was the part 3 guy. Gord or whatever.
If he has the exam and he's sure it's the exam.
He's like, Billy, I need a blowjob.
If it's for sure the exam, but you guys would have to pay me for that. I'm not gonna sleep with him for free. But maybe
How much do you want?
depends on how gross he is.
You're
I
not
think
sleeping with
He's
him
just
for
like
free,
a
you're
baby,
sleeping
just like a dad.
like maybe like $300.
Each?
Yeah.
Fuck you.
But it's for sure the exam.
Yeah.
And the answers.
Oh, okay.
You have to memorize the answers.
If it's with the answers, then
$1,000.
just take all my money.
Just here's my credit card.
Go buy that hunter bag.
Oh, did you buy the bag in Montreal?
I did. How do you know
The
this?
bag, because I need a new bag.
Huh?
I heard something about that I need a new bag.
Oh, you should look at Hunter. The Hunter ones are beautiful. I just don't want to pay the money.
Okay, so the next question I have here is, how do we tackle the clash between the third floor egress window and guards and windows? In other words, third floor egress within 1 meter of floor and openable but needs a guard or restrictor. So this will be something we will talk about egress more this afternoon. So I would suggest that we cover it at that time. So if that question has not been addressed by then, we will look into it a little bit further.
What is an STC class? Do you know?
Hmm?
Do you know what an STC class is?
I'm assuming it's like a rating for this kind of stuff.
What are they talking about? Sort of heating or something?
The next question I have here is, what is the minimum width of a stair or ramp that requires a handrail in the middle? Now that is related to the previous question on the 2200 millimeter stair width and when we require handrails. So with that one we will have to delay responding to because it is related. So we will get a response back on that
Don't
one.
respond to it at all. Just say like, okay, there's a bunch of questions unrelated to my next part. I'm gonna skip those until further. Like, don't. What the fuck? Like,
Billy's pissed.
you're just wasting our time. I didn't pay you to waste my time.
Well, we did.
Shit. I'm pretty sure Anne sent it
We
to
should
me.
ask her the
70
question.
cents a minute. We should say that.
We're paying you
Except for
70
most
cents a
people
minute.
it'd be
Stop
just
wasting.
half an hour. So we're paying $20 for this bullshit.
Excuse me. Lady. Thank goodness for the job here. Yes,
Poorly people.
look at her little hands.
I'll ask her sent it to me again.
Is this your, Chinese bun?
Yeah, I'm trying to propagate it. See all the little ones around it?
Yeah.
I'm trying
To get
make more. Huh?
To get them.
This tall one, the snake plant, is my friend Christine. She's leaving for Italy today, so I'm planting some. We're totally gonna kill it.
That one's really pretty, and also I've never seen such a healthy looking snake plant.
I know. I bought it for her when she moved in.
I have a question here on secondary suites. It's stated secondary suite as well as caretaker suite as well as in-law suite. What is the difference in application of the code? So not quite related to what we were talking about, but certainly we can address it. Secondary suites are suites that are required to have a suite fire separation in addition to other requirements. The definition of a secondary suite is a defined term, and it means a self-contained dwelling unit. So those requirements we had for dwelling units, having, essentially a kitchen, a washroom, bedroom space, that would be, it's a second dwelling unit within typically a house, where you have only one other dwelling unit. And this is again related to a house. It's a single property. So if you have what you would call an in-law or a nanny suite or something like that, it's not necessarily required to be separated by the same suite-to-suite separations that you would have. So I'm not sure what else I can state about that one in particular.
So it's fire, it needs to be fire separate.
If it's a secondary suite, but if it's a second in-law nanny suite,
Then it doesn't have to be.
I think it's actually like if it's like a paid tenant,
Then
then
you
it's a
have to fire
secondary.
Because it does, the code does apply differently. I feel like that was the person's question.
We should start answering first.
I probably could with this.
Another question I have here, it says 987, does this apply to dwellings? So the short answer is yes, this also applies to dwelling units. And again, there are some particular requirements that don't apply, so that probably didn't make a lot of sense. But there is an exception in sentence 3 of Article 9871 that does not require handrails for stairs and ramps serving a single dwelling unit. Again, some of the things we talked about where interior stairs have not more than 2 risers, exterior stairs have not more than 3 risers, or ramps rise not more than 400 millimeters. So again, any of these, I know, I think there was more of a general question that perhaps the articles or the sentences or clauses even within the sections have not been quoted in this material. So that's something we can take forward for next year to be perhaps a little more specific. But it's the danger in, I guess, stating just the the clause or the article is that other portions within that same subsection could be missed. So it's good to read through it. And again, this is, I guess, for teaching, so I understand your concern. But again, so that specifically, does 987 apply to dwellings? Yes, but we would have to look at the other sentences within the articles to see what exactly would apply.
This is so useless.
Is she gonna start fire at 2? No, at 3. At 3?
Like this thing cannot. This doesn't have to go till 5. It can go till.
You guys been to the PR Kingles thing?
Yeah, it's pretty stupid.
Should we go to it? I wanna
I've
go.
seen it enough on Instagram.
I know.
It's not that interesting.
I had a ticket, I just didn't go.
I went because I came back from Montreal and had the day off.
I was like, I should probably be studying. I'm not going to see that.
Wasn't studying.
I know. I had like no social life because it was just like general study anxiety.
Should we be doing other practice questions like during song breaks?
I have a question on STC ratings. It says, can you go over how to determine the STC class between two dwelling units? Is volume 2 required? So yes, it is in volume 2. You don't need to use volume 2. It depends on how you're specifying your fire separation or your suite separation. You can look at a ULC listing. You can look at a number of different sources. The fire and sound resistance tables in volume 2 of the National Building Code is something that's often used that applies to table 910.3.1a. So here it will give you a typical sound transmission class based on the assembly that you're using for your wall partition. So that answers that question. There was another question on STC, and it stated, is STC class applied between bedrooms in a dwelling unit? So no, there is no sound transmission class required for within the same dwelling unit. You can apply this. I mean, this is a design feature that you could incorporate to provide a buffer between your rooms, but it's not a requirement.
Where is the STC?
She said 9, 10 something, but 9, 10 is.
Like there's this stuff that's about partner and it's kind of interesting. It's just about the small buildings, so there's like small building quiz, water this might not particularly apply, but this is pretty good. It's like fire protection part 2 describes fire protection, fire separation.
Okay, I do have another question here. What is the factor to determine the duct size under Part 9?
When it applies,
Um,
this is when it applies, this is when it applies.
So if I'm understanding the question correctly,
Just about
I believe it's related to NBC 932.311. Previous sections in 932 will give you required minimum or maximum outdoor airflows, minimum airflows to specific rooms, minimum exhaust capacities. So I believe this is what you're getting at, ducts for those applications. So the duct, there are equivalent duct flows, for example, again within 932.311, depending on the airflow in that duct. There are some sizing diameters, but it's all related back to your fan sizing. It's more of a question you might want to talk to a mechanical engineer about. But for example, if you have in that table 932.311A, it talks about fan external pressure. So this would be, it relates back to how you're designing your entire system. So if you have and depends on the length of your duct. So there's different requirements, and it all relates to how much pressure can your supplier, your exhaust fan accommodate, the length. So it depends on the pressure drop across the length of that duct. So it's not can't give you a straightforward answer, but I believe that's what you would have to consider, and it certainly be something that you can, look at those tables or get your designer to look at.
Is this how exams gonna be? Because that's really hard. For us, we'll talk about slow construction, architect, color, foam, blah, blah. Carefully fasten in wood. See what's wrong with the building. Is this how the exams would be? I just found like code practice questions. Yeah. It just says, for a small hotel combustible construction, architect proposes to cover the foam plastic insulation in a wall assembly with mechanically fastened sheet metal of 1.4.
I do have a question here on dwelling units, and I believe we're talking about secondary suites. The question is, how dwelling unit is counted as multiple dwelling units when basement is lived by another single family containing kitchen in the basement? So this sounds like what we're talking about is a secondary suite. So we did speak briefly on that, when you're allowed to have a secondary suite within the same, in general, within the same house. And this could be for a single, like a detached home, a semi-attached, or a townhouse, as long as it's under Part 9. So I believe that's what you're talking about. We're not talking about just an in-law suite or a nanny suite or that sort of thing. It's basically, it's still a single family dwelling.
Billy, I'm on the exact website on practice questions, and like a practice question for example, a question for part 5.
So I have another question here, and it is, could you clarify the requirement for 98712? So 9871 is on required handrails. Sentence 2 is on, except where a stair serves not more than 2 dwelling units, at least one handrail shall be located not more than 750 millimeters from the natural path of travel on the stair or ramp. So thank you. That actually comes back to our handrail discussion. I kind of missed that one before. So this is related. So this would not be for your typical home. Again, I guess I shouldn't say typical. It wouldn't be for your typical house where you would have a secondary suite. It would be where a stair or ramp serves more than 2 dwelling units. So this is related to where you have a wider than typical staircase. And there is a There is an appendix note to that one as well, or it's A98712. So within the appendix note to this sentence is where you have wider stairs than required. So the intent is that handrails be installed in relation to the required exit width only. So if you have stairs that are, for example, greater than 1100 millimeters, it's not required to imply that you necessarily need additional handrails. So it's only what you would determine as a natural path of travel along or to or from the building using those stairs or ramps. So that's where the required handrails comes into play.
Because I would scare. I don't know how to answer these questions. Cat law sample exams. I thought we have some in these folders, but like example questions. Because there's some on the exact website you said.
No, they're just examples of questions. There's like one question for each major theme. It's like not enough practice. It just like shows you how they work.
I think Audrey was saying that her boyfriend has some practice exams.
Let me see what I have. I can get my Google Drive. I think of something.
I think we came across some stuff. It's just like these folders are so crazy.
I know.
Like, they're just like everyone dumps everything in there.
I have whatever Donna.
Yeah, Donna shared hers with mine. Shared with her.
Okay, well all I have is what she gave me.
I have hers and Paul's.
I also have hers and Paul's. That's all I have.
So it's exact one. Because it would be nice to do some exams just to know how these things flow.
I know, that's what we were saying.
Do you guys want to do that maybe? Yeah, after this is done.
And moving to the next question, the question is related to ramps, and it was, is there a minimum ramp length in dwelling units? So there is no minimum ramp length. There is a maximum difference in elevation you can achieve with a ramp between landings. And the minimum ramp width would be, as we had discussed, that I believe it's the 860 ramp serving a single dwelling unit, or where you have a secondary suite. Other ramps must be not less than 1100.
It's just all the French. I thought we saw some practice exams on there. I know someone offered to give me some. Does Emma have any?
Okay, so there was a question. I was confused about the slide referring to 988, requiring a guard where there is more than 2 risers. This info is not located in that section. So we go to 988. 988 does refer to required guards, and this is referred to. Bear with me for a second.
I have a practice exam, but it's Ontario from 2006. Building code qualification examination sample questions for 2006.
see sample questions, but they're like random. Cause I just want to sit through a couple exams and see. I found sample questions. Exact questions. See, these seem easier. The purpose resistance requirements in a building code include the following. Or the difference between exit and means of egress is that a means of egress refers
Sorry
to
about that.
that I can
So you're right, 988 does tell you what the guard requirements are when you're required to have a guard. And I apologize, I just can't find the other reference to when you need a guard when you have those 2 or more interior stairs. Or when you have a ramp rise of more than 400. But I guess 988 is the correct guard requirement. If I come across this in the next little bit, I'll jump back to this question. But the information is accurate. It's just that the additional article requiring where you require a guard is not included there. So we will note that for the future to include the additional code reference.
These are not so bad. Which of the following is not a primary structural system that is employed to resist lateral load? Shear walls, brace frames, hinge frames, moment resisting frames.
Where are you finding this?
I'll send you a link to it. It's
Then next.
I accidentally came across it. Do you have your Dropbox? Okay.
Yeah, so the next question was in the requirement for egress windows in a secondary suite or dwelling unit. That will be covered this afternoon. We did cover it briefly within the session as well on the minimum sizing requirements of the 0.35 square meters and a minimum, I believe it's 380 millimeters minimum dimension.
I can share it with you. Which exact do you have? Oh, which one's that one? Because it might be the one I have. I don't know, because I didn't call. But you say you have Paul and Jordan's.
I do have polls.
Aren't there 7? It's called exact. Let me share these with you. And so I don't know. I always get the two mixed. I should probably name them clearly. Oh, I can't. You don't have membership to manage.
Sorry, it's a different email.
You don't have permission to manage membership with this folder. But I thought anyone with it can. But I thought I shared with Kat before.
Yeah, I do have another question here. What article is used to justify using Part 9? So this is related to, I guess, one of the early slides I had on 3 stories, less than 600. So this goes back to Division A of the National Building Code. It's under Part 1 of Division A and Article 1, 2, sorry, 1333. So again, Division A, Article 1333, it talks about application of Part 9. So the previous article there, 1332, talks about when you apply Parts 3, 4, 5, and 6. And 1333 gets into when you apply Part 9. So we are getting short on time here, but there are a few more questions I will try to get through. And they're very good questions. You're certainly making me jump around to the code to make sure I can get those for you.
I shared one with you, which I can share, and I sent one to you, which apparently we have a link you can view the folder. And then I'll tell you what I found.
There's a question here. Do we need to have an SDC rated wall between a washroom and a bedroom?
No.
And we sort of addressed that if it's required between bedrooms. So the same thing would apply. The answer is no. However, you can apply that if you wish, but you're not required to. It's only the suite to suite and between the elevator shaft, essentially.
So is she taking a break after this? Did you get the folder exact and exact one?
I have exact one. Is exact different?
Yeah, exact is different. I found mine, they're different. Exact might be the one I sent the link to you. You have to just open it and view.
A question here, it says, in slide 20, it says that an exit stair serving a dwelling unit should be 900 millimeters. I open the code and it says 860, which is correct. So there are differing requirements depending on whether or not it's an exit stair even, or if it's just another public stair, or if it's serving a dwelling unit. So required exit stairs and public stairs serving a building or residential occupancy, not less than 900, except if it's serving a single dwelling unit or a house with a secondary suite, including common spaces, the width shall be not less than 860. So, and then other than residential, you're back to your 900 or what's required for your occupant load. So I will confirm what the slide says, and if there's any correction that needs to be made there, we will do so. But that is the difference between those two dimensions.
I think Indra is on this.
Mhm.
Indra. Like the guy from the podcast. Indra.
Okay, another question is, can you go over 98814B?
He's in it.
When can this not be used? For example, in a single family home. So 98814B, well, in 14 it says, except as provided in sentence 5, which we'll get to, openable windows in buildings of residential occupancy shall have a guard or a mechanism to limit the opening size to 100 millimeters. So sentence 5 is the exception to this, and I believe what your question is related to. So where the window does not require this protection of that previous sentence 4, where the window serves a dwelling unit that is not above another suite. The window serves a house within a secondary suite. And then there are other exceptions to that. So your question is, so yes, it could apply to a single family home because you would be serving a dwelling unit that's not above another suite. Or even if you had a basement secondary suite, in 5B it permits, it's not required for that application. Can you explain Article 9884? So that requirement is for guards for floors and ramps in garages.
She's thinking
So yeah, we didn't get into that in this presentation, but we can go through it now. It says, except for floors of garages referred to in 935, and 935 is clause 2. Garages and carports serving not more than one dwelling unit. So this would be your typical attached garage usually. So except for these, where garage floors or ramps are 600 millimeters or more above the adjacent ground or floor level, every opening through a garage floor and the perimeter of floors and ramps that have no exterior walls should be provided with a continuous curb, not less than 140, or a guard not less than 1070. So I can only presume that this question is related to maybe small repair garages where you may have an opening in a floor for servicing equipment. So that could be where you might have this requirement.
What she said, what I was saying.
People are complaining. How can you charge people money for a code webinar when you're presenting incorrect information?
Oh, the whole Quizlet thing is like summarized in a PDF as opposed to on the page. This is the same Quizlet thing we did. I'll send it to you guys. It's just hard to find it. I sent you the example exam.
Okay, so we're down to our last two questions when they're sort of the same question here. So I apologize if any more were missed. There were some general comments and questions, which I won't get into, but in terms of the technical ones, there's some questions on treads and tread depths. There is a comment here, just note a correction required on one of your slides, 984, step dimension rectangular treads. The minimum run should be 255 for private and 284 public. So that is correct. So if the slide is not correct, we will certainly update that. Thank you. And the second question is, which article gives the minimum maximum of the tread depth? So this comes from Article 9842, and there's an associated table, Table 9842, which talks about the run for rectangular treads, and it defines what is considered as a private stair. So that would be interior and exterior stairs serving a single dwelling unit or a house with a secondary unit, and garages serving those. And public stairs are those that are not service stairs or private stairs. So again, that was Article 9842. So I think everything has been covered in terms of the questions for specific technical questions. I thank everyone for their patience in running through some of these questions. It's been a good review, and I think for anyone who is in this line of work, it's always good to be going over these and getting asked those questions so that we can answer them the next time. So I thank everyone for their time. In terms of next steps, there is a break before the next session. The next session will commence in approximately 1 hour from now with Samuel Bodie.
Okay, good. She's not on. Good.
Bear with me. I'm trying to get back to my main screen here.
She was useless. Honestly, she was so useless.
Okay. There was, sorry, one more question, and I will address that one before we get on. There was a comment that there was some incorrect information. So I believe there was maybe some questions on the requirements for intermediate handrails. So I do apologize in advance if there was any incorrect information provided. It was an oversight given that the just the information presented, but I don't believe there was any terribly incorrect information apart from that. So by all means, if there was something you've noted that's incorrect, we'll certainly correct that for the next time.
Great.
And that's all I can really say on that. But I do appreciate your time and your patience, and looking forward to the next session with Samuel. Thank you.